She went to Washington and it changed her. So instead of castrating the pigs, she became a sheep. She didn't shake up anything. This time, I'm excited to vote for Teresa Greenfield. She's different. She'll stand up to her own party. She will work with both Democrats and Republicans to get our economy back on track. Teresa listens to people. She'll never forget who she's fighting for.
I'm Teresa Greenfield. Here's the deal. I'll work with anyone in either party, including President Trump, to get our economy moving again. And I'll never forget who I'm fighting for. I'm Teresa Greenfield, running for Senate, and I approved this message. Paid for by Teresa Greenfield for Iowa.
Michael Devine, standing for Medicare and Social Security. After a lifetime of work, you deserve it. AM 1400 KVFD.
That's right. Joe Coleman deserves it, so I'm just going to stand by it. I'll tell you. Joe Coleman is our guest. He's a deacon in the Catholic Church. How's things, Joe? Just talked to you about 15 minutes ago.
Great. Hey, what a wonderful discussion about life, about good food and good relationship. Does Francis hit the nail on the head, or does he?
Yes, he does. And there's always a criticism of the priesthood is that they're a bunch of men who are isolated from society and don't understand marriage, don't understand what happens between a man and a woman, which is a valid point. But Francis is one of those people who can speak passionately and compassionately about the role of the church in a marriage. Not everyone can, but Francis can.
Mike, you and I are, I agree with you down the line on so many things, but I also, just as a caveat, I want to say there are a whole lot of men out there of the cloth who understand, even though they haven't been married, they understand the relationship of a family, because they came from families, but they are steeped in the everyday life of their parishioners. And I'll tell you, I know as a lawyer, I always used to kid with people that the only crime I never heard while I was a lawyer was that somebody walked into my office and said, I attempted suicide. Or, no, I succeeded at suicide. Strike that. And, these guys hear the most intimate thoughts and the most intimate concerns of their parishioners in the confessional when, it's a sacrament of penance, reconciliation. I like to think that these guys understand things that maybe a lot of men who are married don't understand about the female psyche and the female of the species. So I just wanted to offer that, because I know, the easy tag is to say, what the hell does he know? He's not married. He can't know anything. Well, I've never murdered anyone, but I know a whole lot about the crime of homicide, both prosecuting it and defending it. But I've never murdered anyone. So does that mean I don't know anything about it? Of course not.
Well, you do, but you don't understand the emotion behind murder. Murderers have their own psychology. You know that.
Yeah.
And certainly priests, I've known a number of brilliant priests in the past, and I'm not really trying to take issue with you, but I will remain skeptical that priests who are not married or not involved with women in an intimate way can really have a deep insight into a woman's psyche. I've known a number of women, and I found them to be human beings, oddly enough. And
Michael, you'd make a great Jesuit because you're skeptical. You're skeptical. And Jesuits by their nature, there's a 3-letter word that is tattooed across the frontal lobes of every Jesuit that was ever ordained a Jesuit. And it's one word, and the word is why.
Why is right.
Why?
Now, let me get back to the question that I posed to you, or that we began to approach just before the news break, is that why would a loving God, why would a God who, as you described, created us to love him, and he would love us and serve him, and he would be God to us. Why would a God like that, loving God, frown on adults having consensual sex?
Well, we come back again, as we always do, to when we discuss as best we are able. You know, trying to understand the mind of God is like trying to teach a cockroach calculus. Okay,
All right.
you know, we have to struggle as best we're able, but we come back. God promotes order because order promotes freedom, and freedom gives us the opportunity to adore with an open heart. You know, when we talk about this concept, and by the way, let me digress for a second. Francis, I don't know if you read what he had to say in the interview, but he had to say in the interview, you know, our church has been a little bit too strident on this area of sexual relations and the whole concept of human sexuality. You know, we need to lighten up a bit. You know, the best two theologians in my life who raised me after my mother died were both my grandmothers. And one of them used to say, you know, when we face the Lord, do you think he's going to be all that angry with us about what we do in our sexual lives when that is imprinted on us as an instinctual happening, as opposed to how we treat our fellow man, whether we were mean, whether we cheated, whether we lied, whether we hurt. I think there was a lot of earthy wisdom in that kind of philosophy.
I do as well, Joe. And Joe Coleman's our guest here at AM 1400 KVFD. Pope Francis notably spoke of the humanity of gay people, that they were welcome in the Catholic Church. And as a result, The Advocate, the leading gay rights magazine in the country, named Pope Francis their Man of the Year in 2013. Now, that's another thing I never thought I'd live to see. The major gay rights magazine in the country nominating a Pope of the Catholic Church or any Catholic cleric as Man of the Year. That's
right.
That's out there.
Right, Michael, but look at it. Look at what he said. Look behind it. You know, tear it apart. I tell you all the time, let's give it an acid bath. Let's strip it down and see what it was. And what Francis is saying is, we love everybody. We welcome all kinds of people into the church. It's not about the person. It's about is the action that is engaged in between the persons an action of order or an action of disorder. And I'm sorry to have to put it that way, but that's what it is when you get down to it. And so you have to look at it and analyze it. You know, I tell everyone that I have the opportunity to visit with, whether we're talking about gay rights, whether we're talking about abortion, let's lower our voices. Let's try and hear what the other person has to say, and then let's approach it from a point of view of both logic and philosophy over 1,000, 2,000, almost 3,000 years. And in each one of those cases, Mike, it's the arguments don't stand up. I'm sorry.
Well, Ruth Bader Ginsburg would disagree. She has written extensively. She's Jewish, of course, and the Jews have pushed back particularly when it comes to abortion. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg, brilliant woman, has written extensively about the rights, a woman's right to control her own body. Do you think it is an issue that rather than life itself, that it's really control over that a woman needs over her own body?
For my money, absolutely not. I am a absolute firm believer that a woman has the absolute right to control her own body. But you have to take it the next step. The control that's being exercised isn't over one's own body. The control that is being exercised is over another person. Who has an argument that you or me or anyone else shouldn't be able, it's like Oliver Wendell Holmes says, you have the freedom to do whatever you want, except when your fist comes in contact with my nose. At that point, it ends. Your freedom to swing your fist ends when it lands on my nose. Well, it's kind of the same thing in the other area. And I don't mean to be oversimplistic, but it's never been about a woman's right. It's always been about the right of the unborn. And you and I have talked previously about this concept of essence. You and I both know, and anybody who ever studies philosophy or logic understands completely that at the moment of union of the egg and the sperm, essence is created. The potentiality to become a human being. And in philosophical terms, once you have the potentiality to become something, you have its essence. That's where the issue lies. It's not with women. It's with the essence of the child within her.
We do seem to be losing the woman in this whole equation, though. She is now faced with a choice, especially if she's a single woman. And she's a poor single woman. How do I provide for this child? It's not an easy thing. And I think that's a...
Of course not.
I think
but you're so right. Of course not. But that doesn't preclude the issue for the child. I mean, it's a dead-end road for the child. You can't foresee the future. That's what makes abortion so invidious. You can't see the future of what's going to happen with that poor mother raising that child. But you can see the immediate future of what's going to happen with that child within her person. It's going to be death. And therein lies the problem. It's the proximity problem. It's the lesser of two evils problem. It's the lesson of moral philosophy.
You've referenced Jesuits and moral philosophy. As far as your reading is concerned, what book on the Jesuits best explains the Jesuit philosophy?
You were kind enough to ask me that question earlier, and I beg your indulgence for not having responded to you. But the paramount thing of trying to understand the Jesuits are what is called the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius. And they take it takes a process over a 30-day retreat period, where you go through this analysis. It's almost like Christ in the desert for 40 days. And that's one area. The other area, which maybe you and I could talk about next week or in the succeeding weeks, is there's a new Ignatian, white paper out to the people of the United States, particularly Catholics. And it says, and the underlying principle of it is, you need to get involved in politics.
Really?
Every single Catholic in the United States should be intimately involved in their local politics, their state politics, and their national politics. Let me tell you, it is a barn burner, Mike. A barn burner. I'll try and send it to you. I'll print it off. I got a PDF. It's about 40 pages. It is remarkable.
Thank you. I would really appreciate that. When Pope John Paul II started his terms, he urged Catholics to get out of politics. There was a United States senator from Connecticut who was a Catholic priest. He resigned. He resigned his seat in the Senate because to obey the Pope's orders on that. It turned out to be a mistake, I believe. Catholics getting out of politics turned out to be a mistake.
Well, it's something more recent happened than that. Do you remember the leader, the Speaker of the House of Representatives before Paul Ryan was a gentleman from Ohio by the name of John Boehner?
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you remember what happened after the closed session? It was about a 2-hour closed session with the pontiff when he was here in the United States. Did you see what John Boehner did?
No, I didn't.
He resigned, and he didn't run for office again.
Why
I'd love to have been a fly in that room, Michael.
Why would he have done that? I wonder. He was an older man. Anyway.
No, well, I mean, in terms of some of the guys, certainly in terms of guys in the Senate, he was on the younger side, and he was a very active guy, and he was a smart guy. I kind of liked him. I tell you the truth.
Boehner was about 67 when he stepped aside. I thought he was just retiring, and I thought the reason that he retired is because of the changed atmosphere in the House of Representatives and U.S. Senate. He was an old school guy. He was an old country club guy, country club Republican, and there was a lot of fellowship in the House of Representatives at the time and in the Senate, and a lot of conviviality in the last 10 or 15 years that he served.
You're right. He was a Tip O'Neill, Ronald Reagan kind of guy.
That's who he was, and there was, and he expressed frustration a lot of times with his fellow Republicans like Newt Gingrich and even Steve King. And matter of fact, Steve King blames Boehner in part for his losing the nomination this time around. Boehner didn't like people like King or some of the others who were more vociferously conservative than he was. Let me put it that way.
Well, you're kind. Others might say extreme, but I'll accept what you say.
Well, I interviewed Steve King many times over the years, and there were some areas that I thought he went too far on, but I think he was a Catholic. I think he kept within, he stayed within the boundaries of his faith there. As far as support for some other groups or people, and especially that Confederate flag on his desk, I don't know what he was doing with that. But I thought he was an intelligent man who made reasoned arguments.
We have a responsibility. I believe we have a responsibility of Catholics. Basically, as you and I have talked about this numerous times, we only got to do two things. We got to love God, and we got to love our fellow man. And how do you love your fellow man? You don't do anything to him that you would not want done to yourself. And boy, we just can't get by that. That is a 200-foot wall that's Greece. That's Greece. We cannot get over that wall. And we can't go around it, and we can't get under it. Because what that means is that we have to empty ourselves of our ego. We have to empty ourselves of anything which hurts the guy standing across from us. And my gosh, we don't want to do that.
All right. Joe Coleman has been our guest. Fascinating conversation as always, Joe. Really appreciate it. Look forward to talking with you next Monday. Thanks again.
Take care, Michael. God bless. Bye-bye.
This is AM 1400 KVFD.
Michael Devine, the mayor of Manville.
It's a fancy title for a part-time job.
Michael Devine at AM 1400 KVFD.
It's exactly 4:30. The news is next.
Other banks charge fees on savings and checking accounts. Doesn't sound good, does it? Capital One reimagined banking. So it sounds more like this. With Capital One, you can